A few months back, I made a poll asking y'all how I should spice up a time-lapse of this Twilight Princess fan art that I drew. And many of you were interested in a commentary/tutorial type video, but also a rant, and then just combining those two things together. So welcome to this video, which we'll call Twilight Princess art time-lapse with commentary that's kind of a tutorial, but I also occasionally rant about random things as I try to explain myself as best I can. Or something like that. Goddamn, I needed to take a breath and I did not take it. I also just want to say I'm gonna be me, but like this throughout the video. I've never been good at settling on a character to represent me for some reason, but in this case, I felt that a persona would be a little bit better than just a disembodied voice. I know my disembodied voice is very alluring, but you know? The first step of the drawing process is the initial draft. Can we remove this? It's getting worse, isn't it? Tools of the trade. Before we get into stage 1, I drew this piece in Clip Studio Paint. I used a Wacom Bluetooth medium tablet, my hands, and my brain. And I think you get the gist. This first stage is where I figure out basically everything. What the piece will look like, what elements of the story I want to focus on, what characters I want to include in the piece. Alternatively, this part could be known as praying to the art gods that my brain will make something that I'm happy with. In the end, I had 3 different concepts and went with the last one. I cannot stress this enough. Use references. Life is your greatest teacher and you should learn from it. Here's what I used for this piece in particular. Sketchfab, which is a website I highly recommend of 3D models. Modelsresource.com, which has a bunch of in-game models uploaded, which you can download as a zip file. Clip Studio's built-in 3D assets. And lastly, I used good old Google image search. I just want to say Link's 3D model is my favorite thing of all time because you can make him spin fast enough to either generate enough electricity to run a small fan, or just replace a fan altogether. Once the initial drafts are done and I've collected all my references, I then create a clean draft using the references. This is when I focus on anatomy and build a strong foundation for all the other stages to come. I'm still experimenting lots here with stuff like character placement, canvas size, possible additions, so on and so forth. The thing that I kept thinking about throughout this whole entire process was composition. I wanted this piece to be full, but not too busy. That is to say, I wanted lots of little details, but I wanted those details to work harmoniously instead of clutter the whole canvas and make things all weird and gross. That's the reason why you'll see things like the Triforce, the Souls, and the Hero's Shade magically disappear into the abyss as this time lapse goes on. What was I supposed to rant about? Yeah, that works. According to Google, there are more than 1,800 types of cheese in the world, and I want to know why I haven't tasted all 1,800 of them. So in a need to fix this very real problem, I decided to try a kind of cheese I'd seen before in the supermarket and I was always curious about. It's called mimolette. Its color is an uncanny but beautifully vibrant pumpkin orange, and it's from France, and it's kind of expensive, but goddamn, the list of cheeses I hadn't tasted yet needed to get shorter. So I bought it and I tried it. Well, if you want to know what the verdict is, I've eaten that much of the cheese and I was just taste testing it, so it's a really delicious cheese. Well, after I ate about a third of the mimolette, I realized that I had heard of mimolette before, but I couldn't remember the reason why. I just knew it was special for some reason. So I ended up asking Google, why is mimolette so special? Well, maybe it's special because it's made using cheese mites, which eat at the rind to enhance mimolette's flavor. Which means there were mites on the mimolette. There were mites on the mimolette! Cheese mites should be on the packaging. And sure, the mites are no longer on the cheese by the time you buy the cheese and they're harmless and it could be considered kind of cool, but it'd be nice if they'd let me decide if it was cool. Why do I have to Google it to find out? To my horror, even though I didn't eat the rind, that this cheese was caressed by the many mouths of mites. And while we're on the subject of food, avocados that are 90% pit, and that one nut in the bag that tastes like the bottom of a rotten shoe. It might be pitiful for me to complain about, but those things drive me nuts. Let's talk about line work. My rule of thumb is that if the sketch is completely figured out, line art is gonna be relatively pain-free. Now, I practice this as much as I can, especially when I work on commissions, but with big pieces like this one, what is good advice? I've never heard of good advice in my life. At this stage, I keep working on the lines, but also keep sketching. I guess it's just that when I'm working on something like this that takes several days to complete, I work on what's easiest first, or what I've figured figured out first. I ink that stuff in, and then I go back and revisit the parts that were either more difficult or kind of boring for me to work on. For example, Ganondorf's headpiece or Midna's headpiece. Both of them have very cool but very cursed and intricate headpieces, which, by the way, I did try to simplify to make my life easier and not clutter this piece up too much. I know you could call this grasshopper behavior, and it honestly makes things go a little bit slower, but my excuse is that slow progress is better than no progress. The logic? There's still logic, I guess. What brushes do I use, you may have asked yourself? I used this brush from this pack for the line work, and colors were done using Clip Studio Paint's standard round brush and gouache brush. Also, what is this? Wait, is this the next thing we have to rant about? How does that even happen, okay? You're taught that your body tries to survive no matter what. It heals itself, it has a nervous system with white blood cells that fend off intruders, has adrenal glands that produce adrenaline to help us run away from danger. So then explain to me why I just choked on my own spit, forgot how to drink water, low-key worry about my appendix for probably no f***ing reason, and suddenly twisted my ankle all funny while crossing the street. Editor, right now would be a good time to color, like right now. I tried 2 color schemes, but ended up going with the one that's directly inspired by this piece of official artwork, which is Chef's Kiss. If I know the name of the artist, I will flash it up on the screen. There are certain things in this drawing that took me a lot of back and forth to be happy with, namely Zelda's face, Midna's face, Link's eyeballs, and Wolf Link. Wolf Link was a big one for 2 reasons. One, I nearly forgot about his chains. I wanted to free the man, can you blame me? And the second thing is that in-game, Wolf Link has a very stout stature. When I was working on the clean revision, he was well proportioned, but in my attempt to stay true to his in-game model, I just squished him. It wasn't until this point, though, that I realized just how teensy-weensy his legs looked, and then gave him back his spine. You're welcome, Wolf Link. Have a vertebrae or 2 or 3 or 4 or maybe 10. I think wet socks are the worst. This transition is terrible, actually. I believe that I speak for everyone when I say that absolutely no one likes wet socks. What would you like for Christmas? I'd love to get some wet socks. The feeling of cold moistness between every toe underfoot on a chilly day where you can't afford to put the heating on feels absolutely wonderful. Says no one ever! In fact, wearing any article of clothing that's wet and clingy is a sin. Our ancestors were built differently, you're right. But it's not about the cavemen, it's about the women who wore bathing suits in the freaking 20s. All that's left to do now are final touch-ups. This includes stuff like highlights, adjusting colors, coloring the line work, and tidying up any stray lines and accidental smudges. There was a special effect I was really interested in trying out with this piece, which is when the line art has a sort of glow to it. I've seen lots of artists use this in their work, and I really love the look of it. So I tried it out for myself here. By the way, to achieve this look, you duplicate the line art layer, plop it underneath the line art layer, and then blur the duplicate out with something like Gaussian blur. Don't ask me why, but I feel like this fits Twilight Princess really well. Like the mood, like somehow the blur emulates some of the vintageness that Twilight Princess has. I'm not saying 2006 is vintage, I'm just saying, and it's not, mind you. Do not say 2006 nor 1993 is vintage. Do not come in here and say that. Like, don't make me rant about how they say vintage 1964. That's not even that vintage. What was I again? Boy, oh boy, guess what? The artwork is done. We're at the finish line. And oh, hey, is that a physical version of this Twilight Princess fan art signed by yours truly? It sure is. If you want this on your walls, prints are available in my shop, hawkthorne.bigcartel.com. Link is in the description. Dude, big pieces like this, I don't always finish them, but I did stick with this Twilight Princess one because I really wanted to draw something to reflect how much I enjoy playing the game. So here we are. I finished it. Everybody, celebratory spin, celebratory dance. Let me know in the comments down below if you like this kind of video, or if you have any questions for me in terms of the artwork, in terms of anything, the cheese, the socks. I will respond to those questions gladly. Thank you so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. Sayonara. See you later.